This video will contain heavy spoilers for Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Keep watching at your own risk. The Xeno series is known for its heavy use of religious symbols and references worked into the game's theming and narratives. One aspect that often gets overlooked, however, is the philosophical concepts tackled by the characters and scenarios. A shining example of this can be seen in Xenoblade Chronicles 2. For this video, I'll focus on parallels to Existentialism, a philosophical movement focused on finding meaning in life. This can include questions like, what makes someone human? Is life worth living? And why do we exist in the first place? Just to give a few examples. Now, why don't we get started? The Algerian-born French philosopher Albert Camus proposed a concept known as absurdism. He proposed that humans are a species driven by a desire to find purpose for everything we do. In contrast, the universe we inhabit exists as it is. It doesn't care what we want from it. The absurdity, then, comes from the fact that we're driven as humans to find a clear-cut reason for the things happening around us, when that reason may not necessarily exist. A large motivation for many of the game's characters is to find a reason for living. The main party kind of gets an answer when they meet the architect Klaus, the man who essentially took on the role of a god in order to rebuild the Earth. There's a clear parallel between the concepts of absurdism and Klaus's speech to the party, in which he says,
"When a person loses something, they cannot help but seek a reason why, within themselves or in others. They seek a concrete answer to the question of who they really are deep inside. Such a very lonely existence. But perhaps that is what it is to be human."
To build upon absurdism, in his book The Rebel, Camus proposes the concept of rebellion against the absurdity. This rebellion can manifest itself in two distinct forms, the nihilistic rebellion and the genuine rebellion. The nihilistic rebel, as the name implies, embraces nihilism or hopelessness as a way to cope with the absurdity. He becomes disillusioned with the state of the world and hates how horrible it can get. He is hopeless that things will ever improve unless he and only he does something. He uses this hatred of the world in order to justify committing terrible atrocities. Camus' work was mostly written after World War II had ravaged Europe and when the Cold War was picking up momentum. It's easy to tell then that the dictators of the era and their cruelty were fresh in his mind as inspirations for this theory. Camus goes as far as to say that the nihilistic rebel takes it upon himself to act as God and devil at the same time, and uses any twisted method available in order to achieve his vision of a perfect world. If this sounds familiar, it's because it heavily parallels the motivation of Praetor Amalthus. In his youth, he regularly witnessed senseless violence. He was consumed by the death of his mother at the hands of bandits, and later in life when he catches a man who he had helped moments ago trying to loot a house after killing its residents. This cements his hatred of the state of the world and makes him into an overall misanthrope.
Oh, architect, is this the world that you intended?
When he climbs the world tree in search of Elysium and the architect, hoping for an answer, he finds nothing but the Aegis cores. This is the moment in which he embraces nihilism. He has no reason to believe in a god anymore, having gone knocking on his door and finding nothing in the living room. With no god to place his hope for a better future upon, Amalthus takes it upon himself to fix what he dislikes back on Allrest. Upon returning to Allrest, he awakens the Aegis core Logos, and it creates Malos upon receiving his influence. Malos being born with that same hatred shows that by this point, Amalthus already harbored destructive ideas. At the end of Torna the Golden Country, Amalthus usurps the status of Praetor. Even though he had essentially lost his faith after his climb up the world tree, this is because he still needs the title to secure the power to go on with his genocides for what he believed was a purification of the world. Because of this, Amalthus embodies the nihilistic rebel against the absurd. A fitting title, I would say, for the man who's also known as the acting god. This concept can also be seen with Jin. He misdirects his hatred of Amalthus and wants to destroy the entire world. Like Amalthus, he has seen the horrors that occur on a daily basis and feels the pain of having Laura taken away from him. The absurdity of a blade's life cycle is also a large part of his motivation. He wonders why blades have to live in a loop of what's essentially amnesia, to the point where he becomes a flesh eater to avoid forgetting Laura. The absurdity of it all, the lack of reason for such a painful existence, is what leads him to aid Malos in attempting to destroy the world. On the other hand, we have the genuine rebellion, led by what I will refer to as the true rebel. The true rebel is one who, like the nihilist, recognizes the world's imperfections and seeks to combat the absurdity and meaninglessness of these struggles. Unlike the nihilist, however, he embraces hope by finding the beauty that the world has to offer. Instead of hatred, he seeks to unite everybody through a shared love of the world they inhabit, and use that love as a fuel to make the world a better place. As you can probably already tell, this is a perfect characterization of Rex. Time and time again, he pulls the party through hardships with his unwavering optimism. He meets characters who had come to hate the world, and some who even wanted to end it all to escape the absurdity. He manages to show them what the world has to offer, and to love the world no matter how absurd their existence may be.
Tell me, do you love this world?
Yes. Me. Xenosaga. And you, Rex. I love this world because you're in it.
To most players, this may come across as just a cheesy love confession, and admittedly, it is. But to me it signifies a bit more than that. It shows what the true rebel should strive for, to be a beacon in the darkness that inspires hope and ignites a new appreciation for a flawed world.
My only purpose is to destroy. I am the Endbringer. That is why I must go to Elysium and awaken the ultimate artifice Ion.
Absurdism is not the only concept tackled in this game, however. Perhaps the most fundamental and well-known idea in existentialism is the phrase existence precedes essence. Essence meaning purpose in this context. This is a phrase coined by French philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre in his lecture, Existentialism is a Humanism. In this lecture, he describes the difference between how people and objects receive a purpose. He uses the example of a paper knife. The knife is created by a person for one clear purpose, to cut paper. Even before it physically exists, the knife exists in the mind of its creator as an idea. This means that the knife's purpose exists before the knife itself. Its essence precedes its existence. For people, it's the opposite. People are born without any clear purpose for being. Without this clearly defined reason, the meaning of life becomes subjective and up to the individual to find their own meaning. In Xenoblade 2, this can be seen with pretty much any character. We've already discussed Jin and Amalthus, whose need for a purpose drives them both down a dark path. Then there's Rex. In the final confrontation with Malos, he declares his essence when asked why he even bothers fighting.
Why don't you just let it go? Who do you think you're doing this for?
I'm doing it for myself. If it helps put smiles on people's faces, helps them live their lives together, then that's my role in this world!
He finds that his essence is to make as many people happy as possible. Once again showing his rebellion against the absurdity, he preaches the importance of forgiveness in the face of all the bad in order to see the beauty that the world has to offer. This is all a fairly standard depiction of the concept of existence preceding essence, but what happens if a character embodies the opposite? What if one character shows the perspective of the paper knife?
What are we, in the end? This hunger I feel, this thirst, is it really my own? Or is it someone else's? Sometimes I can't tell. Tell me, Jin, are you really here? I don't know where I really am.
This idea is explored by Malos. He's what happens when a person is born with their purpose clearly laid out before them. In the Torna DLC, he's shown to be even cockier than he is in the main story, and even comes across as playful, showing how he has fun fulfilling his role as the Endbringer. Things are different though after his return to Alrest 500 years later. Before the final boss fight, he argues with the party about how Jin's life would be much better if Malos had never existed, and goes so far as to call himself
a hideous monster, far beyond saving!
Showing how he seems to have developed a sense of morality and perhaps even feels guilt after befriending Jin. Despite this new sense of morality, he's unable to stop his destructive path, as his programming, corrupted by Amalthus' influence, forces him to seek destruction.
How could I? That isn't my role in this world.
Unable to resist his programming, he uses Jin's suffering as a moral grounds to justify his urges, knowing deep down that the real cause is his driver's influence. After the final battle has concluded and he's faced with death, Malos makes one final declaration.
There was only one driver for me. In all, it wasn't so bad.
In the end, he was able to accept his essence. And now that he's finally been freed of his duty by Rex and Numa, despite not accomplishing his goal, he's still satisfied with how his life turned out.
Looks like he's finally found it. Lady Mary. A meaning to his life. Indeed. Frankly, I'm a little jealous. After all, most people go their whole lives without finding theirs. I wonder if I'll find mine.
This then raises a question for us, the players. If we were given our life's purpose when we were born, would that be a good thing? It would relieve us of the mystery and restlessness of not knowing, sure. But as shown with Malos, if it's something we don't like, we'd be doomed to accept it. Maybe it's a good thing that we're born not knowing.
More fun not knowing? Reiki want to have fun!
Hey, if you made it this far, thanks for sticking around until the end. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like down below. It took a lot of time and research to make this, so I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Maybe you thought of even more examples that I didn't go over in the video. Also make sure to subscribe for more content like this at some point in the future. Catch you in the next one.